At Arizona State University, we've made online education better, smarter, and more personalized so you can go further in your aspiring field.
I decided to pursue medicine once I realized that ASU did have the online program for biological sciences. You're still required to learn the same curriculum. You're still being tested on the same content that anyone would be tested on in person. The comprehensiveness of the program prepared me so well for medical school.
Explore over 300 programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
Having a life scholarship and being able to afford to go to college made me feel inspired to go.
When I got a life scholarship, it was such a relief.
I knew that I wanted to have an impact. Having a life scholarship through the SC Education Lottery was huge. It gave me the opportunity to make that impact right here at home.
The South Carolina Education Lottery. A better you, a better us, a better South Carolina. Visit sceducationlottery.com/betteryou.
This is VOCM Open Line. Call 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626. The views and opinions of this program are not necessarily those of this station. The biggest conversation in Newfoundland and Labrador starts now. Here's VOCM Open Line host Patty Daly.
Well, all right, and good morning to you. Thank you so much for tuning into the program. It's Friday, June the 13th. This is Open Line. I'm your host, Patty Daly. David Williams, he's producing the Come On With It edition of the show. So, if you're in the St. John's metro region, the number to dial to get in the queue and on the air, 709-273-5211. Elsewhere, toll-free long distance, 1-888-590-VOCM, which is 86-26. So I settled in last night to watch Game 4 of the Stanley Cup Finals. 3-0 for Florida. After the first period, I turned it off. Wake up this morning and see the highlights. Edmonton wins 5-4 in overtime. Draisaitl with an incredible goal in overtime. They were so close in regulation. Sam Reinhart scored for the Panthers with 20 seconds remaining in the third period to tie it up. The season, for the most part, was on the line in overtime, and the Oilers tie up the series 2-2. Pretty great. This is a local hockey story, and this is a problem. So yesterday, Nova Scotia Junior Hockey League, they decided they were going to pull out of the Don Johnson Cup, which is the tournament that celebrates the best junior teams in Atlantic Canada. All the winners of the various provinces, they go play for the Don Johnson Cup. Don Johnson, one of the absolute legends of sport in this province and nationally. So they pull out, and for no real apparent good reason. Maybe it's about the money. Apparently, we did not send a team to the championships last year, so I guess that's part of it. But now they're talking about creating some sort of maritime championship, and we'll be on the outside looking in, which is a terrible development. I'm trying to find out more from Nova Scotia and here as to what's happening, but that's not great. And for golf fans, U.S. Open week. And, of course, U.S. Open always takes place on the Father's Day weekend. They're playing at Oakmont Country Club, one of the toughest golf courses in the world. Just a couple of interesting stats that I already shared with Dave Williams this morning. Bryson DeChambeau, of course, a past U.S. Open winner, he says that an 18 handicap would have a hard time breaking 200 at Oakmont, which is amazing. And this is a stat coming right from the USGA. 1,385 players have played a major championship at Oakmont. Only 27 of them have finished under par after 4 days, which is pretty remarkable stuff. Anyway, you want more sports? Okay. On this date, 1948, Babe Ruth's final farewell at Yankee Stadium. And then he passed away on August 16th, just at the tender age of 53. They were celebrating the 25th anniversary of the stadium. And, of course, people refer to it as the house that Babe Ruth built, or the house that Ruth built. And so that, this date, 1948. Okay. Let's keep going. I got an email from someone that says, and they admit in the email they were going about 115 kilometers an hour on the highway near Corner Brook. And they said that they were absolutely blown away by an SUV that blew past them. And a little while further down the road, they find that car had been pulled over by the police. And then you see in the news this morning that Buddy was clocked doing 180 kilometers an hour in the 100 kilometer an hour zone. The only time I've ever been in anything going 180 is in an aircraft, in a jet. 180 is out of control. So we know all the same stories. Pulled over, gets a big whopping ticket, probably dangerous driving charge, vehicle impounded, license suspended. 180? I know that this is a little bit out of hand, but that vehicle, if it was up to me, would be in the crusher. Going 180 just puts every single person, including that driver, in distinct jeopardy. Anything that pops up in front of you going at that breakneck pace, you're done. So 180 kilometers an hour, there's just something has to give. So the speed cameras, they have not been installed yet, but how many people out there have probably been going to 140, 50, 60, 70, 80, 180, and no one's there insofar as a police cruiser, so they get away with it. So hopefully the speed cameras, and I know plenty of people don't want the speed cameras to come to town, but I'm glad they are. And hopefully it will slow people down. So there's a few things about it. The questions people ask is about license plates covers, and you're not allowed to put a cover over your license plate anyway. And then it's about if it's not me driving my car and it gets flagged by a speed camera. Well, I mean, if you loan someone your car, and you know that you loaned it to them on Friday the 13th of June, and they get a ticket that's processed, shows up in your mailbox, and the speeding ticket's for that date, well, that's between you and whoever you loaned your car to. So, but 180, that one irritates me to no end. All right, changing tune. So we know the federal government is now forcing a vote on the union representing the 55,000 postal workers across the country. People will talk about, the death of collective bargaining, and we've seen that the rails and the ports and Canada Post strikes have taken place and legislated back to work. So this feels a lot like that. So the union, of course, will complain about it, and Canada Post's future is very much up in the air. What it's going to look like into the future is anybody's guess. And again, people say we'll blow it up. $1.3 million in operating losses, $1.3 billion in operating losses last year. Of course, unsustainable. They were always a self-sustaining organization until a couple of years ago when they had to borrow, I was going to say they had to borrow $1 billion in a loan from the federal government. But it's a 13% pay increase over the course of 4 years is on the table. They are talking about, they banned overtime inside Canada Post and their unionized employees at this moment in time. They're talking about weekend deliveries and a variety of things on the table. And look, as much as people take Canada Post for granted, and people call it snail mail and the advent of all the private delivery services and email versus handwritten notes that people used to exchange quite frequently, it's a big deal. And Canada Post, until it goes away and we realize exactly what the impact is, just think about the 32 days that they were on strike around Christmas. It cost Canadian businesses somewhere in the neighborhood of $200 billion. I mean, that's remarkable numbers. So Canada Post will find out sooner than later exactly what the outcome of that particular vote will be. And I would imagine the bulk of the employees would like to stay on the job and keep working, as we all understand and know. All right, let's keep going. All right, a couple of interesting numbers, and there's something to this. So the Liberal Party was, for the first time ever, obligated to release in full all of the donations that came into the candidates vying for the leadership. And, of course, it was between Premier John Hogan, who won, of course, and John Abbott. We'll deal with Mr. Abbott's story here in a second. So there was a limit of spending of $200,000, but John Hogan brought in $261,145. Mr. Abbott raised just short of $90,000. Premier Hogan only spent the $200,000. The other $61,000 goes into the Liberal Party coffers. All right, so that's one thing. There's too much money in politics, the end. The story also goes on to talk about the number of big corporations that made some donations, some of which are holding government contracts, which begs the question: which politician representing which party will, for the first time ever in recent memory, speak about campaign finance reform? It might not be the biggest issue in your world, but just sit back and think about it. When we see some of the big, most lucrative contracts let by the government go to a company, and then people, they do their due diligence and they look at it and they find that that company has made significant donations to Liberal Party candidates or PC Party candidates if and when they're in power again, and it erodes the faith in the system. Procurement is already tricky enough, and we do need to have a more keen focus on domestic procurement and provincial companies and the little bit of variance we give them in winning a government contract, but let's just deal with this. If we put some tighter clamps on this, and for instance do away with the ability for people living outside the province, companies set up outside the province, to make donations in our own provincial elections, is a problem. I'm not saying that every single dollar donated by a company guarantees them favor into the future, guarantees them first crack at government contracts, which is the best bit of gravy in the world of procurement, is to get a contract from the government, but that's how people perceive it. So let's just deal with it. Every time, you talk about democratic reform, doing away with 50% plus one, the first past the post, and the potential for some hybrid proportional representation, whatever it is. And same thing with campaign finance. it's easy enough to talk about it as being problematic and vowing to do something about it. But once you win, you realize that part of the reason why you won is 50% plus one, and or the amount of money you were able to raise as a party or individual candidates. But it comes back to haunt them. If they want to talk about currying favor, I think there's a victory there, politically speaking, if they do something about it, because that would be a real display of political courage, which I think would resonate loudly and proudly with the voters in the province. But we still let it go, and people don't think about it and talk about it until there's a big contract led, and then people say, well, how much money did they donate to the government? And it's a fair question. Mr. Abbott. So I think there's way more unanswered questions than a firm understanding about Mr. Abbott's resignation. A few things on that front. Number one, Barry Pettin, who's welcome to call the program. We speak of Barry frequently here on the show. One of the quotes from the story about Mr. Abbott's resignation is, "I wouldn't just walk away if I was innocent." What does that actually mean, Mr. Pettin? And please do indeed call this morning. There's no allegations of John Abbott doing anything wrong. It's elections NL, and they've admitted as much. So the way the special ballots were handled obviously was the furthest thing from ideal, and a massive problem for the democratic institution that is an election. So I'd like to know what Mr. Pettin thinks or is actually getting at with that particular comment. And yes, John Abbott didn't do anything wrong. And we don't know what the results would have been in St. John's East, Kitty Vitty, or in Mount Pearl North, or in St. Barb Lance Meadows, because nobody knows who would have voted for who when they didn't get a ballot or it wasn't received on time by Elections NL. Now, with Mr. Abbott stepping down, they talk about it as being a part of the settlement. Is anybody going to tell the rest of us exactly what the settlement includes? I think that's probably pretty important to understand. Yes, there's a democratic victory here. Yes, we need to have a sharp focus on how we handle things like elections that may be interrupted by whatever. In this case, it was a pandemic. It could be a natural disaster. It could be who knows what that interrupts the free flow and the efficient flow or effective flow of an election. So then people ask, so if Mr. Abbott was resigning as a result of the quote-unquote settlement, what does that mean for Lucy Stoyles in Mount Pearl North? Because Jim Lester, the PC candidate, he was applying in front of the courts, questioning the results of the election. What happens to Crystal Lynn Howell, cabinet minister representing St. Barb Lance Meadows? She was also in that riding or district was in question because Sheila Fitzgerald questioned it. So what do we need to understand here? You know, you can't just let this go by the wayside because there's a lot on the line. Look, it's more about the politics of it all because nothing really changes insofar as who represents those districts. And we'll see what the fall election, which I believe it will be in the fall, what that will entail. But I think the Premier needs to let us know. So Premier Hogan, either put out a release or join us on the program. We'll set up a time. Can someone walk us through what are the details and all the moving parts of the settlement? I think it's too important that it just let slide. And yes, it'll be more about a black eye, politically speaking, for the Liberals and the question as to whether or not it was an appropriate time to call an election, all those types of things. And some of that is just the historical footnote. But into the future, what's going on? And will we see not only administrative changes at Elections NL, but also legislative changes to try to prepare for what could happen to disrupt or derail elections into the future? So I'd like to know, what about you? All right, let's keep going. So the greener energy companies, so we're talking wind, hydrogen, ammonia for export. So when they made applications for leasing Crown lands, there was a fee associated with it. Now we understand that there's some $13-ish million in unpaid fees for 2024. Some companies, 3 of them, have said that they are up to date with their fees owing to the government, and others are not. My question is, because I don't live in an area where any of these proposals have been laid, you let me know. What is actually taking place anymore? I mean, are they still out there preparing for the possibility for these projects to get off the ground, even though it seems less and less likely as time goes by, certainly in the short term or the near term? So if you are living in one of those areas, please help us understand, describe what work may or may not be ongoing where you live. I think that's a big one. And Crown lands, we used to have a lot of conversations about individuals and dealing with Crown lands. You know, we'll talk about the Diamonds from Catalina. And they went through that process, and of course they ended up having to pay thousands of dollars to purchase the land that they had a home on for some 4 decades. So we can take on Crown lands in the big scheme of things as well. How are we doing out there this morning, Dave? All right. I haven't had a look at, is the online crime dashboard actually launched? Can we have a look at it? I think that's a pretty positive move by the government, even though we're talking about the negativity that's associated with crime. But it's the trends of crime and the types of crime, what's actually happening where you live. It's certainly going to be helpful for municipalities to make some plans into the future to brace for the type of criminal activity they see. But I just popped in my head. I haven't even had a look to see if it's actually been launched yet, but I think that's probably a very good thing. All right, a couple of quick ones before we get to you. Oh, yes, and we can take on the Upper Churchill conversation with the departure of both Premier Fury and Michael Sabia, two pretty key figures on either side of the negotiation, or the negotiations, I should say. All right, so the G7. It takes place Monday, Tuesday. The leaders will start arriving in Kananaskis, Alberta on Sunday. And of course, the leaders from France, Germany, Japan, the United Kingdom, Italy, the European Union, and other invited guests, obviously, and some concerns being voiced about things like Indian Prime Minister Modi and others. And we can take it on. One question that gets asked, and I don't know what to think or say about it necessarily, and I don't try to talk about American politics on this show unless it directly impacts Canada, even though some of what happens in the States just inevitably flows across the border and into the hearts and minds of Canadians. But it's the question about whether or not the President of the United States can come to Canada, because we don't, or we're not supposed to, allow convicted felons into the country. But there's an exemption for diplomatic immunity associated on that front. And it's interesting to hear from former Prime Minister Chrétien saying that he hopes the leaders don't take the bait of whatever nonsense Trump wants to get up to steal spotlight or to be the story like he always wants to be. And what's happening in the States is absolutely out of control. But what's on the agenda? So pretty vague stuff. Apparently there's going to be just short snippets in the form of a post-conference communique, as they say. So we're going to get short, bite-sized morsels to dig in on. So here's what we think are the 3 core missions, so says the Prime Minister, Mark Carney. First thing, protecting our communities and the world. Promoting peace and security. Okay. The second is building energy security and accelerating the digital transition. We talk a lot about energy in this country, understandably so, but the digital transition piece is also pretty interesting. You know, when the NATO meeting takes place, we're going to talk about increasing the defense spending target from 2% of GDP, which apparently we're going to hit this year, which is the first time ever, up to 5%, which will include cybersecurity. So I assume that's part of this digital transitions, as spoken to in vague terms by the Prime Minister. And then it's securing partnerships of the future. Securing private investment and all the rest of it, whether it be in housing, energy, and everything under the sun. It is amazing to me that we are at a place in history in 2025 where the most reliable partners are probably not there anymore. Certainly not for now. And the American-Canadian relationship, which used to be just something I guess we took for granted, and I think people get a bit carried away and say we just rely too heavily on. We relied heavily on a country that we share a border with. We rely heavily on the biggest economy in the world. We rely heavily on the fact that their intertwined economies of scale are there for a reason, and they've worked for both countries, including the United States. But here we are. So we'll talk about expanding and diversifying markets and all the rest, but the G7, you can only hope it doesn't become a spectacle, a sideshow, when there's important business to attend to. But I got a funny feeling this one is going to be an absolute boondoggle. Hopefully it's not like 2018, where it was in, I guess, Charlevoix, Quebec, which was absolutely, the plot was lost there as well. Let's check in on the Twitter box, where VOCM Open Line, you know what to do. Email address is openline@vocm.com. When we come back, we're going to kick off the show, speak with Paul, who wants to talk about the upcoming Canada Summer Games to be held here in St. John's and surrounding area, and then whatever you want to talk about. Don't go away. Welcome back to the program. Let's begin this morning on line number 1. Say good morning to Ward 1 Councillor here in the city of St. John's. That's Jill Bruce. Good morning, Jill. You're on the air. Is that pot up, David, by chance? Jill Bruce on line 1, you're on the air. On hold. Let's go to line number 3. Paul, you're on the air. I think Mr. Williams is trying to work something out here on the board. So, yeah, we'll just see if we can get that organised here in a moment. So, Jill wants to talk about, or Miss Bruce, Councillor Bruce wants to talk about the Hoyles destruction. There's plenty of stuff there to understand. For folks in the area, they need to be armed with information about timelines and exactly what's happening, whether it be things like pre-inspection to understand the rodent population, to deal with said rodent population before they start to demolish the Hoyles home, because you have to imagine there, and I'm not going to take guesstimates about how many, but there's got to be hundreds or thousands in there. And if they don't deal with it, then the area is going to be absolutely overrun. I worry about that in and around where I live with the old Ballyhaley golf course. If and when they go to start development there, it's going to be the same result in our neighbourhood. Okay, let's keep rolling here. Let's see if we can try Ward 1 Councillor Jill Bruce on line number 1. Councillor Bruce, you're on the air.
Thank you, Patty. How are you this morning?
I'm very well, thank you. How about you?
Good, thanks. I thought this might be the easiest way to connect with a resident. I think she may have called your show at one point. I don't know if she reached out to you directly, but we did get 2 voicemails to the mayor's reception from her, one in March and one just recently. But unfortunately, she doesn't leave any contact information, so it's incredibly difficult for me to reach back out to her. So you're the person who people listen to, so I'm going to give it to you.
Okay.
So I think she had some concerns about, she lives in the area of the Hoyles old building, and she had some concerns about the demolition. So first thing I'll say is if anyone in the area has any questions, concerns, please reach out to me directly. I'm extremely accessible, email, phone, within 24 hours. If you haven't gotten a call, I've probably fallen off the edge of the earth. So in that note, I will tell her what I've told others who have reached out. So with all of the demolitions that have, anyone who reached out for a permit with the City of St. John's, for a demolition permit, they have to prove that they have a pest control certificate and a hazard assessment completed. So 2 of those things have been completed with this. They wouldn't be able to start the demolition without those. So be rest assured, if you live in the area, pest control has been done. And in fact, in this one, in 2022, that's when the hazardous material removal was done on that building. So it was done a couple of years prior. So what they're doing right now, the first thing they had to do was construct a fence, which they did, and that was there for a little while before I saw any activity inside. Again, we can, put the permit out and give them a year with the permit for demolition, but we as a city don't really have any control over how long this takes. If it does, if it's not done in a year, I'm to understand they have to apply for another permit. So most property owners won't want to do that. They'll want to have it done within the year. So for timelines, it's really hard for me to tell residents the timeline on this, except that their permit is for a year. Right now, they were going to do the inside first and demolish all of that, and then they will take the building down. I did notice when I drove past, I think just last week, I noticed that the outside siding and things like that was coming off. So that's a good sign. I mean, I have wanted this building gone for years, and it was one of my things I went after and it's hard to do it because again, it's not the city's building. It's a building that's been left there for quite a long time, and it was privately owned. So I'm just really, really, really glad to see this building coming down, to be honest.
I think many people are. So can you just go back to the rodent inspection or related issue? So what happened?
So when they apply for a permit, before they start any work, they have to present to our regulatory services staff a pest control certification. And I went back to staff and said, so am I understanding that by saying this, they have completed their pest control before the demolition starts? And they said yes. So back in, I think it might have been February, they obtained their permit for this building for demolition. So that pest control would have had to have been done, and they have to show the certification from the company showing it's been done before any of the demolition begins.
Okay, I as much as that makes my skin crawl, I'd like to know a bit more about how that worked and what exactly they identified and what they did about it. Because it's one thing to do an inspection, but an inspection doesn't mean anything's been rectified or the rodents have been dealt with. So I'm not really sure what that means.
No, it's a pest control certification. So that means that pest control has been completed, not just an inspection. It means they have gone in and done pest control measures before the building comes down. Yeah. I mean, I can get clarification from staff if you want details. I don't know. I mean, every company, I would assume, does it somewhat the same way. But that has been done before that building has to be done as part of our demolition process.
That's good to know because,
yep, for sure.
I mean, again, there's big issues that we need to broach, but the rodent population, specifically rats in the city, is out of control. It really is. I mean, the park behind my house, I was just standing there barbecuing just last night where I could see a path being forged in the grass. I couldn't see the rat itself, but you knew full well it was because you could see it zipping up the park. They're everywhere. And for buildings like the Hoyles Escazone and the old Grace's nurses' residence and Ballyhaley, whenever that becomes a developed piece of land, something has to give here. I think think we're nudging up against a municipal responsibility here, maybe a provincial responsibility, because it's a health concern as much as it is an irritant.
Yeah, so I'll say that I have it's almost like a cycle. So in the fall and the spring, that's when I'll get my calls from residents who notice an increase, I'll say, in the rodents in their area. And when I say rodents, just I'll say it's rats. We don't have raccoons and things like that, so it's rats.
Yep.
But this... So there's been a couple of things that I've seen in the last 3 months that I've never experienced before in my 4 years on council. Very interesting cases on properties, and they range from when we talk about crime and all that kind of things to rodent control and rodents. What I will say is that when I get a call that there's an influx of rodents, when we drill right down and our inspection services staff get involved, 9 chances out of 10, there's a property involved where they're the source of the rats. So what that may be garbage left outside, that may be something in the home that's attracting them, it may be bird feeders, seed being thrown on the grass. But 9 chances out of 10, once we figure out that issue, and this is not just in that house or that just on that property, that then, as you can imagine, goes right through the surrounding neighborhood. But once we can figure out and target what's happening, we can normally, under normal circumstances then, take care of a lot of that issue that neighborhoods are seeing. I'm not going to pretend that there's not still an issue. But I know on my own property, when I see a rat, it's because there's something around us that's attracting them. We put a few traps out, we talk to the neighbors. Normally we don't see them then for a while longer. But there is normally a source that's attracting a huge population. If you're seeing them running through your grass in the daytime, there's something going on in your neighborhood.
Absolutely. But then it becomes the complicating factor of whether or not your neighbors are going to play ball. Because you can do whatever you like. If the neighborhood doesn't, in joint operations, deal with it, then it doesn't matter what you do as a property owner. Because the rats will go wherever they can, number one, get a drink of water, number two, get a bite to eat. And that could be anywhere. And in our front lawns, we don't necessarily have fences separating front lawns. So if my neighbor won't play along, then I can hire pest control and spend thousands of dollars to get no further ahead.
That's true. I wouldn't disagree with you at all. However, there are things that we can enforce that can help rectify these problems. And I can say this with a surety because I've seen it in the past 3-4 years, especially recently. And you can't just take birdseed and throw it on your lawn. Nope. Because then, not only rats, if you see pigeons, if you see hundreds of pigeons all of a sudden show up in your neighborhood, there's something going on, and that's because birdseed's being thrown on the lawn. You can't do that. Like, that's a bylaw infraction. So we can enforce that. We can enforce garbage being left out in your backyard, just sitting. Right? So there are things that we can do, and we've got really, really, really good dedicated staff in our inspection services department but we work on complaints. So I say to people, if you see an influx of rodents, for example, in your neighborhood, in your garden, and you don't have anything that's attracting them, like hot tubs. They love to live under hot tubs. Just take the fencing around your hot tubs away. Don't give them a secure place to live, but call it into your ward counselor. Call it into 311. Let us know. We work on complaint basis. So once I'm aware of it, I can then try to deal with it.
Fair enough, and I appreciate the information this morning, Councillor. Thank you.
Just one last thing, Patty, before I hang up, just in the season, because it is the season. I just want to let the residents of my ward know that I will be running for re-election. I've thoroughly enjoyed the last, especially year, getting my feet, on the ground and figuring out what in the world I was doing in this role. And I'm grateful beyond belief of the trust they put in me 4 years ago. And so I'll be beating the streets again this summer. And anyone has any issues or anything, please reach out. As again, I'm always here.
Appreciate your time. Good luck.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye. Jill Bruce, Ward 1 Councillor here in town. Let's take a break. When we come back, Paul, you're next to talk about the Canada Games. Then we're going to talk about the MRI at the Janeway and whatever you want to talk about. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 3. Good morning, Paul. You're on the air.
Morning, Paddy. How are you?
Excellent today. How are you doing?
It's Friday, right?
Yes, sir.
Paddy, I listened to some of your show there yesterday, and they were talking about the Canada Summer Games and all that, and the kids and everything coming for the summer, about the government they're not sponsoring their uniforms. Is that what I heard right?
Okay, so there's a lot to this. So different sports apparently have different levels of funding. Like I heard from someone whose granddaughter is playing on the softball team and they got $40,000. Then I heard from different parents who were involved in baseball and they were trying to fundraise, I think somewhere upwards of $15,000 to buy their own uniforms. They need 2 sets. So I don't think there's exactly the same, which I wonder whether or not it's different provincial associations are helping at different levels in addition to the provincial government funding. So it's a bit of a dog's breakfast out there.
Yeah. My thing is, if they're representing Newfoundland, you would think the provincial government would sponsor them. They had no issues in sending 170 grand over to England for the borough soccer team that had nothing to do with Newfoundland. And like these kids, they're our youth. They're representing our future and everything else. And you know yourself as well as I did. I done my fair share running around getting sponsors for soccer and hockey and baseball when I grew up. And I think we're close to, maybe I'm a little bit older than you, but we're close to the same age and we know what it's all about. The thing is that I was watching the news here, I think it was probably Wednesday night on CBC or something, and John Hogan was on there, the Premier, and he was talking about our youth as our future and everything else, and we all know that, and he even spoke about his own children and everything else. By not sponsoring these kids for Newfoundland and Labrador, it's setting a bad precedence for these kids right from the get-go, because you know yourself, you can make a lot of good contacts in sports for careers, jobs, and it's a network that works, and I don't know if you agree with that or not.
Well, I do, and plus I also think there's a lot of life skills comes from participating in sports. Now, you don't need to be on an organized sports team to learn said life lessons, but there's a lot of good that comes from it. For starters, playing for the name on the front of the jersey versus the name on the back of the jersey. Just fundamental things like that I think are helpful. Now, sports not to be all and end all, but these families, if anyone's ever been in the Canada Games churn, it takes a couple of years to pick the teams. So you're traveling for tryouts, you're traveling for tournaments. There's a huge cost associated with playing at that level of sport. So something as fundamental as a uniform. Look, when we were young playing sports, we fundraised endlessly. It was non-stop, year-round, working bingos, selling raffle tickets, and all the rest of it. So I know sports teams are going to have to do some of it, but if you're competing in the Canada Games, representing the province, scrambling to buy your own jerseys seems like a bit much.
Yeah, and I mean, Jerry Byrne and Sarah Studley, they had no problem justifying spending 170 grand over across the pond for a sticker or whatever it was, or a shoulder patch for Newfoundland and Labrador. And I read a few articles after Ivan, I can't remember his last name, he writes an article in the Express there. They never got as much feedback as they thought they were going to get, and that was the end of it. When people questioned it, never heard from either one of them. But when they announced it, but it'd be nice to see if you can get someone on from the government to figure out why they didn't just sponsor it. I mean, 170 grand over across the pond, that would have done really good for our local kids from Labrador and Newfoundland and St. John's, right?
It would have bought every uniform. That's for sure.
Oh, gee, yeah. I mean, it would have done great for those guys. And like I say, there's people leaving this province all the time because we got the highest unemployment rate and everything else here. And if I was 15 or 16 years old, and you know what we were like, I know what I was like when I was young. If they didn't give me a uniform, I wouldn't be very happy with them down the road. That's the thing with them, right? And then if they're going to go into sports and try to make a career out of it, or go to the Olympics or whatever, right? God love them. They're probably going to travel to another province where they can get more sponsorship and more help.
Possibly so. It was not that long ago where all the elite athletes in the province, 99% of them stayed and played in the province. Now it's a different set of circumstances here. And I mean, just if you boil it back to cost, look, there's so many young kids out there that could possibly be participating in sports, but when mom and dad can't afford it, they never get a chance. And there's something patently wrong with that. And look, I get it. People say, who cares about sports? What about the potholes in the hospitals and the schools and the roads? I get all that. But sports is still part of a healthy upbringing. And to not be able to get a jersey from the government when you're going to be playing for Newfoundland and Labrador is just sort of a bit tone deaf. I mean, add to it, this is year of sports here in the province. So anyway, I don't want to dwell on it too much, but it's an important issue for many. I get tons of emails about it.
Yeah, I know, and I was just going to bring up your sport too, but you bet me to it. And Paddy, there's one more thing before I let you go here.
Sure.
With the summer Canada Summer Games, I understand that all the volunteers and everything else like that, and you brought up on your show about this nurse and everything about vetting and everything else, and I agree with it 100%. I think that anybody that comes into this country or lives here or is from here, they're applying for a job, they should have to go get a criminal background check and a vulnerable sector check, no matter what field you're working in. That's my outlook on it personally. Now, whether it's right or wrong, but if you did no wrong, there should be no reason for you not to be able to go get it. And all these volunteers for the Canada Summer Games had to go get a criminal background check and a vulnerable sector check and everything else. And you knows what I'm going to say. You got these ride-sharing companies that are coming here. They're having issues right now in Brampton, Ontario. I was just talking to a guy there last week, one of the dispatchers with Blue Light Taxi in Brampton, Ontario. And they've got drivers taking other people's cars, other people's phones, and when you call, half of them are not registered as ride-sharing drivers with Uber, Lyft, whatever companies that are out there, Bolt, Cabby, whatever. Everybody that's volunteers or is involved with the Canada Summer Games with these 4,000 children and their families and everything else, they have to be a criminal background check and a vulnerable sector check. But the provincial government and the city, they're just as bad because they were the ones that started. Danny Breen started all this ride-sharing stuff. They're allowing these companies to come in here from the States, which they're trying to shop local, buy local, spend local. They're allowing these companies to come in here and do ride-sharing, and they're here again this year, as I told you last year. They come here from Ontario with Ontario license plates on them. I'm after seeing them already at the airport. They come here for 2 or 3 months through our tourism season, take our tourism dollars, and take it out of the province. And then the provincial and the municipal governments are letting this happen, and I don't understand why.
Fair enough. Appreciate the time, Paul. Thanks for calling.
Yeah, have yourself a good weekend, Paddy. Take care.
You too, buddy. All the best.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Dave, what will I do here? You want me to just take the break on time? I really do not like taking the break on time. As much as the boss wants me to. All right, let's check in on the Twitter before we get to the break. Good question from Wally. I didn't see it until now. We were speaking with Jill Bruce, who's the councillor, Ward 1. Asked the councillor why they decreased the amount of time a contractor takes to do pest control. For me, it's not necessarily the time allotted, it's the effectiveness of the pest control. So if you can do it in 5 days, then who cares if you take 14 days, as long as they do it right. That would be my biggest concern. And I would like a little bit more information about that. You know, just a couple of things. Exactly what they saw when they went into the Hoyles complex, and exactly how many rats were dealt with, I'll say, as opposed to exterminated. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll talk about the MRI at the Janeway, and then we're speaking with you. Don't go away. Welcome back to the program. Let's go to line number 2. Say good morning to the independent member of the House of Assembly, elected in and serving the folks, Mount Pearl, Southlands. That's Paul Lane. And good morning, Paul. You're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy, and thank you once again for the opportunity.
Hold on, Paul. We got to put you on hold and get a clean phone line. Okay, let's keep rolling. Line number 4. Colin, you're on the air.
Good morning, Mr. Daly. How are you on this Friday morning?
I'm doing better as time passes by. How about you?
Well, when you put it like that, I guess I'm doing good too.
Good. Glad to hear it. What's on your mind this morning, Colin?
I want to talk about the overnight strike in Iran by the Israelis.
Yeah, scary stuff. So there's... you go ahead. I'll let you carry the conversation. Go ahead.
You know, Israel has launched a major attack on Iran, and it's not just a one-off operation. I think this is going to be a prolonged and sustained endeavor by the Israeli government, irrespective of who's leading the government, whether it's Netanyahu or anybody else. Israel has taken out top nuclear scientists in Iran. It's also taken out top intelligence and military officials in that country also, and they're not done yet. It's very, very, very concerning. This is a major escalation of military operations and conflict in the Middle East. And it has the potential to draw in other parties that are currently either sitting on the sidelines or just affiliated with Iran, like their terrorist proxy groups, like Hezbollah, for example. I think this is going to re-energize those groups, and they're spread all over the Middle East and into Europe. And it's just another penchant or another opportunity for more violence or a disseminated area, I think.
So, I mean, their supreme leader, his name again is Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, I think. Is that the right?
Yes.
Okay, so they're promising severe punishment, and obviously they would be making that pledge. But, we were told by the American president that he was given Iran 60 days to cease and desist their advancing towards nuclear arms. So today's 61 or 62. And of course, they were supposed to have the 6th round of negotiations on Sunday. So it kind of feels like that's off. On top of that, so is this, it's one or two things. It's either a big middle finger from Netanyahu to Trump, or Trump is getting his dirty work done by Netanyahu. It's one or the other. So, I mean, there's no other two potential explanations for this. And it's kind of like, didn't the world have a deal called the Joint Comprehensive Plan to keep Iran from developing nuclear weapons that was torn up simply because it was an Obama-era plan and treaty, and it was torn up, and here we are.
Well, that's right, because the stable genius took a look at the JCPOA and said, oh, no, that's part of the Obama legacy. We can't have that. So we're going to have to get rid of that. And by the way, the Iranians were in full compliance with that agreement, which was negotiated by the P5, the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council, and the Germans. And Iran was complying with that. There were UN nuclear inspectors on the ground in Iran in all of those facilities, monitoring their activities, and the UN agencies responsible for nuclear weapons and nuclear enrichment programs reported that Iran was in full compliance with the terms and conditions of the JCPOA. In comes Trump. That's a bad deal. Didn't give any reasons why. He just said it's a bad deal. I didn't elaborate on why it was a bad deal. He can't do that because that would require forward thinking, which he really doesn't have, in critical thinking. And so now we're in a situation where U.S. foreign policy and diplomacy in the Middle East regarding Iran and Israel is to put a gun to Iran's head and say, let's get a deal in 60 days or that's it. That's not how diplomacy is done. The JCPOA took 6 years to negotiate and to get terms ratified into some type of international binding agreement. And in comes Trump. And now here we are, like you rightly say. Israel has attacked Iran, and they're not done yet.
I doubt it. Anyway, I mean, what's going on? Sometimes when it's out of sight, out of mind for many, these types of issues, whether it be in Gaza or in Ukraine and now in Iran, these have complications for the world. So to turn blind eye, say, well, I mean, it's the other side of the planet. What do we care? Look, you have to care, because when things escalate to the point where we have nuclear-armed countries involved in these types of escalations, then worst-case scenario is not something that's just in the movies on the silver screen. Worst-case scenario is a possibility.
Absolutely. And Iran to have a nuclear weapon and is not only a danger to the Middle East, it's a danger to all of us. And Iran, the government of Iran has publicly stated repeatedly that it's committed to the destruction of the Zionist state. Is committed to the destruction of the state of Israel. They're developing a nuclear weapon. They're well advanced in the centrifuges and all the other very technical equipment that's needed to enrich the uranium to weapons grade, to put out a warhead. And Israel has stated adamantly that Iran will never be allowed to develop a nuclear weapon. So it's like two trains around the same track heading towards each other. And I see no way to resolve this issue, peacefully, as long as Iran has the stated goal of destroying Israel, and Israel has said that it will never allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon. So I don't know. Yeah,
here's a bit of a self-own, or I don't even know how to discern this one, but this is a statement from Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Tonight, Israel took unilateral action against Iran. We are not involved in strikes against Iran, and our top priority is protecting American forces in the region. Israel advised us that they believe this action was necessary for its own self-defense. President Trump and the administration have taken all necessary steps to protect our forces, remain in close contact, blah, blah, blah. So basically, what that says is Netanyahu just gave the finger to Donald Trump.
Yeah, it would appear on its face that that's the case.
Even though I don't believe that.
Yeah, I don't either. Some of these facilities in Iran are very deep underground in mountainous regions. Apparently, the Israelis, according to some of the military people I listen to, say that Israel doesn't possess the necessary ordnance to get under, to bomb these facilities that are deep underground, and they would require the assistance of the United States to take out these installations that are buried deep in the mountain ranges around the country. And if that's the case, that the United States is drawn into this, that'll only further inflame the situation, I think. And what this attack does too, and you hit on this earlier, it takes other issues like Gaza, what's going on there, and the situation with that thug in the Kremlin, what he's doing in Ukraine, that puts this on the back burner. This is a major development now in the Middle East, and all these other issues get pushed to the back burner. And when that happens, you have other countries like China now getting renewed interest in its push to take Taiwan, because they might sense that there's some instability going on within the American government and its reticence to get involved in conflicts in the Middle East. So they might take that as a green light to launch a full-scale invasion of Taiwan. So it has repercussions not only in the Middle East but throughout Asia, East Asia, and potentially globally, and affect us here in North America too, right?
Every bad actor on the face of the earth, insofar as leaders go, are licking their chops at all this stuff. An unstable world is in their best interest, and there's lots of reasons as to why we are where we are, and I'm not going to blame it all on one person, but stability coming from the big powerhouses and their leaders is what keeps the place from burning down. And I try not to even follow too closely American news necessarily, but it's hard to take your eyes away from the train wreck. It just is. And what goes on in Iran overnight is not the end of this story. This is going to continue into the future. And if and when it does, what do you think it's going to look like insofar as Iranian retaliation? It's going to be as severe as they can muster. I'll give you the final thoughts, Colin, before I get to the news.
You're right on the money. It's the international order is at stake here, and stability and global institutions. And we look to international organizations that were founded, especially after World War II, like NATO. And our country is a founding member of NATO. That's the glue, like you said, that keeps the lid on everything in a lot of cases. And the diplomacy that goes along with that are diplomats who try to keep the peace or make the peace. Nobody wants military confrontations, but you've got like the President of the United States. He wants to pull his country out of NATO. He doesn't care about NATO. And that's just one more arrow that should be in the quiver,
Well, they're talking about military action in Greenland, which is part of Denmark, and Denmark is part of NATO, and Article 5 could be triggered. These are big, complicated issues that I don't pretend to have a full grasp on, but I understand the bare minimums of what being a member of a defensive alliance like NATO means and what Article 5 says. Yep. So, anyway, Colin, I've got to get to the news, but I appreciate your time. Hope you have a nice weekend.
You too, Paddy. Cheers.
All the best. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, let's take that break. When we come back, Paul, hopefully we have a clear phone line to talk about the MRI at the Janeway with Paul Lane, and then whatever you want to talk about, don't go away. Welcome back to the program. Let's go to line number 6, see if we can connect with the independent member from Mount Pearl Southlands. That's Paul Lane. Paul, you're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy.
Good morning.
And thank you for the opportunity once again to, try to get my message out on matters of public importance. Paddy, I had a couple of things. The first thing I just wanted to bring up was related to the MRIs. I heard Zita was on earlier this week talking about her experience at the Janeway trying to get an MRI and issues around privacy and accessibility. And I know she did send you a picture. She sent me a picture as well, and I did speak to her about it. And there's no doubt what we have there is sort of at this time, is sort of a makeshift solution, if you will, and basically we have some sort of a structure that's framed up, attached to the Janeway out on the parking lot, and it's framed up, covered with this thick plastic, and that's basically where people are going now to get an MRI, and it's a mobile MRI. And the reason for that is that the main MRI that would normally be at the Janeway, I've been informed, and this was confirmed by the Minister's office, that's been out of service since December. And I guess as an update to that, because the Minister's office did get back to me, and they've indicated that there is somebody in this week working on the MRI. Now, I'm not sure exactly what working on it means and how long it's going to take to get the MRI repaired. I understand there may have been some issue because the parts, I think, had to come from Germany. And I'm sure with COVID and everything else, perhaps that might have played a role in terms of trying to get parts and things like that. 6 months in the meantime does seem like a long time to have that MRI down and only getting to a point of fixing it now. But I guess that's water under the bridge, and they did put a temporary solution, albeit not ideal. And they are working on fixing the MRI apparently now. But anyway, I guess the main point around it is that, well, I guess first of all, there's a few questions. One, why is it taking 6 months even to get to fixing it? But as I say, it is apparently being fixed now. The other question would be, was there not space inside the building where they could have done it? I'm going to assume there wasn't, because if there was, I would think that the staff there and administration would have done so, and I will give them the benefit of the doubt and say that this is, I guess, the best solution they could come up with. But the biggest piece with all this is that there's no doubt there is accessibility issues. You saw the picture. You got to go up over these stairs onto a platform to get into it, have the MRI. And what's supposed to happen is that they're supposed to call you before you go to get your MRI, and they're supposed to ask you some questions, a survey before you go in. And part of that is to ask you, do you have mobility issues? Now, according to Zita, the question they asked her is, will you be coming in an ambulance or are you mobile? And she said, well, no, I'm not coming in an ambulance, I'm mobile. But of course, she has MS, and so she has challenges, or could have challenges with stairs, and there's other people would be in that boat. So, and the other problem that's happening apparently is that when someone is going to get the MRI, and this came from the Minister's office, and they contact the person, say the day before, to ask them the question about, among other things, mobility issues, people are not necessarily answering their phone. So now they show up there and they haven't done the survey. And of course, if they have mobility issues, then that's going to be a problem. And because if they knew there was mobility issues, I'm assuming they would send them to perhaps St. Clair's, because I think there's an MRI there that they could use. So I would say to people, until we have confirmation that the MRI machine, the regular one, is up and running again, and they're going to continue to use this, makeshift system, then I would encourage people, if you have mobility issues and you are scheduled for an MRI at the Health Science, that you contact the Health Science and let them know in advance that you have mobility issues and you're not going to be able to get up over those stairs, and see if you can get your MRI, I guess, I'm assuming at St. Clair's, rather than someone, for argument's sake, leave Clarenville, as an example, and drive all the way to St. John's, show up and not be able to access that MRI and have to go home and wait for another appointment, perhaps at St. Clair's. So just call in advance.
Okay, fair enough. For clarity, the MRI that's down is at the Health Sciences, not at the Janeway. The mobile MRI is at the Health Sciences. The issue regarding accessibility, someone also told me that there is a wheelchair lift there that's accessible for folks who need it. So I haven't seen a picture displaying that, because when Zita sent me the pictures, it very much looked like if you were in a wheelchair, then someone was going to have to help you out. And there was no lift that I could see in the picture. So just for clarification, the MRI that's down is at the Health Sciences.
Yeah, okay, well, the Janeway is attached to the health sign, but fair enough. I thought it was at the Janeway, but anyway, it's all...
because the one at the Janeway is operational.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, it's all connected. It's basically at the same site. But anyway, I guess the bottom line is that they should call and make sure. And yes, in the response I did get from the minister's office, the response they said is there is a device to assist people with mobility issues, but their words are it's not ideal. So I don't really know what that means. And Zita indicated that there was no lift when she was there, and certainly the picture she sent me, there was no lift. So I'm not sure exactly what kind of lift they're using and how ideal it is or it isn't. But I would just, again, say to people, if you have mobility issues, and you have not been called, or, because maybe you didn't see the phone number coming in, or there was a strange number on your phone, you chose not to answer it, I would say to people that if you have mobility issues and you are booked for an MRI, you should really call before you show up and let them know you have those mobility issues to ensure that when you do arrive that you're actually able to access the MRI that's currently set up. I guess that's the message that I just wanted to get out.
Fair enough. I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Patty. Can I very quickly just comment on one other thing?
Sure.
I've got time? Okay. So the other thing I just wanted to quickly comment on was the announcement about the settlement with Alison Coffin and so on. I do want to say that I do feel I feel badly for my colleague John Abbott, because I feel he's kind of a victim in all this. He did nothing wrong. He just went out and knocked on doors the same as I did, and it's not his fault that Elections Newfoundland and Labrador had so many irregularities and things that were done. So I certainly wish him all the best. I know this must have been a difficult decision for him to make. But with that said, what happened with the election, we all said it. It was an absolute disaster. Immediately after the election, with the first week I was in the House Assembly, I put forward a private member's motion calling on the government to do an investigation of what happened with the election and so on. And the lead on that at the time was Minister Hogan, now Premier Hogan, and they had no part of it. They wanted no part of doing any kind of investigation. I know my colleague Chris Tibbs also put in a PMR, and we debated it. There was numerous questions, and the government dismissed it. And at the end of the day, we all knew it was a mess, and I guess that's all come to light again through this court case. But the bottom line is there was 3.5 years that legislation could have been put forward to try to at least review to see if there are any gaps and ways of closing gaps and addressing things that happen, but there was absolutely nothing done. We did have a Democratic Reform Committee in place that was about to do consultations, and then, of course, Premier Fury came along and called the election. The committee got quashed, and I stood in the House immediately after the election again, asking for that to be reinstated, and they wouldn't do that either. So, yes, the election was a disaster. John Abbott got caught up into it. Like I say, I feel bad for him. But at the end of the day, the government had 3.5 years now. They could have made some changes. They could have investigated what happened. They could have made some legislative changes. They could have reinstated the Democratic Reform Committee. They chose to do absolutely nothing. So, yeah, there's not a lot that came out of this in terms of solid, I guess, from the court case. Not a whole lot of action is going to come out of it, a bit of vindication, I suppose, and as I think I heard you say yesterday, a political black eye to the Liberals, and I would say that they absolutely deserve it. Anyway, that's basically what I wanted to say about that this morning, and I thank you for the opportunity to do so.
Appreciate your time. Thank you, Paul.
All the very best, Patty.
You too. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
All right, let's take a break. We'll look back. Susan Galway's in the queue. She's after-stroke coordinator for Newfoundland and Labrador with the March of Dimes. And then we're going to talk Make-A-Wish. Marius is there to talk childcare, and then whatever you want to talk about. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number one. Good morning, Susan Galway, an after-stroke coordinator for Newfoundland and Labrador with the March of Dimes. Good morning, Susan. You're on the air.
Hi, Patty. Happy Friday to you.
Happy Friday to you as well.
We chatted in the fall, and I just thought this being Stroke Awareness Month, it would be a really great opportunity to call in and kind of do a refresh on the programs and supports that we offer. Yeah, it is Stroke Awareness Month. June is Stroke Awareness Month. Newfoundland and Labrador sees well over 1,400 strokes every year. And our program is really about giving hope to stroke survivors and their loved ones, really at a time when people feel overwhelmed and hopeless. So, as an after-stroke coordinator, I will, chat with anyone that's been referred to our program, whether they be a stroke survivor or a caregiver, and we would do some goal setting. We would look at referring them to any resources that are in their home community, because, being connected to your community is really important. And then, March of Dimes Canada also offers a host of supports and resources and programs that people can plug into as well. So I just think it's a really great opportunity to let Newfoundlanders and Labradorians, whether you're in, Mount Pearl or Goose Bay, know that Newfoundland and Labrador do in fact have a stroke program. And that's for any of our residents. And how you would get connected with the program is, we've been really, really fortunate, Patty, with the government of Newfoundland and Labrador, and the Department of Health have been really great friends of ours. We do have a memorandum of understanding with healthcare facilities across the province that referrals can be made directly when patients are getting ready to be discharged, whether that be home or a care facility or rehab. We do have a memorandum of understanding that any of our allied professionals within the province can refer to our program, but people can also self-refer, and it doesn't matter if you're a day out, a week, a year, or 10 years into your stroke recovery or your stroke journey, and it certainly is a journey. We want to make sure that people in the province understand that that's what we're here for. We're here to support them. We're here to walk with them, and they don't have to be discharged from hospital or rehab and feel like, now what, right? I think that really is a horrible feeling. I talk to stroke survivors and their loved ones every day, and people, they do feel overwhelmed, and understandably so. So we want to try to help alleviate some of that.
Not every individual circumstance is the same, nor is it inside the family dynamic. How do you go about personalizing treatment plans, or I guess recovery plans is the best way to put it?
Yeah, that's a great question, Patty. So it's really about meeting people where they are. Like, what I may want for someone, or what I may feel they need, or they should do, that's not what it's about. It's not about me. It's about the service users that we're supporting and we want to walk with. So what is important to them? What was their life like before they had their stroke, both for the stroke survivor and, their partners and their loved ones, because it really affects and impacts your whole family. I mean, stroke survivors are not just seniors. We have, I spoke with a 25-year-old stroke survivor this week. So it's really important to appreciate that stroke can impact anyone at any point in their lives. I have people that are hiking the East Coast Trail and do yoga and, are fit as fiddles, and they're having strokes. So this can really impact anyone, but it's about meeting people where they're at. We have a lot of supports that and programs, like we have an aphasia program, so that's for individuals that have communication deficits. We have virtual peer support groups. We have mental health programs. We have an in-person group that happens at the Miller Center every month. We have support groups for caregivers and life partners of stroke survivors. We have virtual exercise. So we would take, as an after-stroke coordinator, I would take any or all of those supports that we have internally, March of Dimes Canada, And I would marry those with, well, what is available for you in Bishop Falls? What is in Hants Harbor? What is in Lab City? What do you have in your community that I might be able to connect you with or make you aware of? Because the reality is you don't know anything about stroke unless and until it impacts you, just like any health emergency or health episode. So, patients and will go home, and then they'll say, well, is there a support group? Is there, somebody in my community that does physio? And these are things that maybe you wouldn't have had to plug into. And if you didn't need to know about it, then you're just simply not going to know. So then that's my job too, what's in your home community that I can connect you with, and then what do March of Dimes have internally that I can refer you to. But again, it's not about what I would see as being fit. It's about people getting back to the things that matter to them, that they care about. People want to get their license back. They want to go back to work, right? A lot of stroke survivors have young families and they have bills to pay. And I would really, put anyone to the test and say, what if you had a stroke and you couldn't work for 6 months? Then what would that look like financially for you? So these are the things that after stroke coordinators like myself and my cohorts across the country are kind of dealing with every day when we chat with our clients.
How can someone connect with you, Susan, if they so choose?
Awesome question. Thank you. Again, I have a direct line, so it's 709-351-7111, 351-7111. And I also encourage people to go to www.afterstroke.ca. And you can kind of have a poke around there, see what we've got. Again, it doesn't matter if you or your loved one had your stroke, 10 years ago. If there's supports that you think you could avail of that we offer, then by all means reach out. That's what I'm here for. That's what the After Stroke program is here for. And also, before I go, Patty, we are having a fundraiser tomorrow, and that starts at 2:00, and it's at Winslow Ridge, which is 11 Lanza Meadows Crescent. And we're going to have an ice cream bar and popcorn and bingo and all kinds of fun things. So that's for that's open to anyone. Bring your friend, bring your family members, and come on out and just have a little bit of fun and see if we might be able to raise some funds in Newfoundland and Labrador for stroke.
Sounds great, Susan. I appreciate your time and the work that you're doing. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Patty. Have a great weekend.
The very same to you. Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye.
Susan Galway, After Stroke Coordinator with the March of Dimes. Let's take a break right on time. Mary's, you stay right there. You're next to talk about childcare. Don't go away. Welcome back. Just a quick traffic note before we get to Mary's. Line number 1, Brian, you're on the air.
Yeah, there's a rollover on Mary Meeting Road at Mare Avenue there, Patty. Let your public know.
Yeah, so stay away. You got to be doing something pretty crazy and or going pretty fast to roll a vehicle over.
Well, apparently someone went through a red light. That's all I know.
Okay, well, so stay away from that area while we try to get that cleaned up. Hopefully no one's seriously injured. Appreciate this, Brian.
You're very welcome. Have a good day.
You too, sir. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
Yeah, what goes on to have a vehicle roll over in a city street? Anyway, let's keep rolling. Let's go to line number 3. Marius, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. How are you this morning?
Very well, thank you. How about you?
Oh, I'm doing okay. Long-time listener, second-time caller. I heard on your show there a number of times last week child care providers calling in, giving their frustrated perspective of trying to open child care centers here in the province. So I figured I'd call in and give a parent's perspective.
Sure.
So my partner and I found that we were expecting our first child on October 1st, 2023, and by October 18th of that year, well before they were even born, we already had them put on daycare wait lists here in St. John's. I mean, that's how early you need to act if you want a chance at getting regulated child care here in the province. Fast forward to February of this year, we were told by one daycare here in town that we were 50 on the spot. So we thought, great, we're getting close. But then last week when we followed up, we were told we dropped to somewhere beyond 250. I mean, that's not only heartbreaking, it's infuriating. We're on every daycare list we can find here in St. John's Metro, still nothing. And what makes it frustrating for myself is families with children already enrolled are prioritized. So people just starting off with myself, with my first child, would keep getting pushed back. I mean, at first I was upset at other families. I even felt a little bit of resentment towards a coworker whose second child got a space while we were waiting. But then I realized it clicked. This frustration shouldn't be pointed at other parents. It should be aimed at the system and the government that built it. I don't believe families should be forced to compete with one another just to access something so basic. If you want childcare, you should be able to get it, period. So really, there's 3 points I want to make for calling in here this morning, Patty. Number one, lack of access to affordable, regulated childcare. This $10 a day childcare program sounds great on paper, but it really is meaningless if there's no spots available. Families are stuck on year-long wait lists or forced to pay sky-high rates for unregulated childcare. It's a basic service, and it's essential for working families. The reality is many parents, especially mothers, are having to delay going back to work, reducing their hours, or leaving their job entirely just because they can't find childcare. Number two, the ECE workforce crisis. So at the heart of the staffing crisis, early childhood educators are overworked, underpaid, and often burned out. So until we start paying them a fair wage and treating the profession with respect it deserves, we won't have enough people to staff existing spaces, let alone new ones. And the last point I want to make is lack of transparency and accountability. So, I mean, the government keeps making announcements, new spaces, new strategies, but there's very little follow-through or public data. So families like mine want to know how many new educators have actually been hired. What's the real number of available spaces? How long are we expected to be on these wait lists? I mean, without transparency, I find it really hard to hold government accountable or to even believe that anything's actually changing. So, I mean, they don't even track wait times, like how long someone's expected to be on the list before they can expect their child to actually get into childcare. Just to wrap up my message, this isn't just about my family, it's about the thousands of others here in Newfoundland and Labrador. I mean, if we want people to work here, raise families, and ultimately stay in this province, we need to build a childcare system that works. And right now, it's a system that does not work, and it's failing the people who need it the most.
All fair points. Just to expand on one of the points you made, not only do we need an update on the number of spaces created and the number of early childhood educators, there is a reasonably good plan in place for, forecasted rate of pay increases, which I think is obviously helpful. But the numbers that we do get are not really painting a very clear picture. The number we need is net increase. So if we created 1,000 new spaces, but we lost 500, then that's not 1,000 new spaces. That's 500 new spaces. So we need those net numbers, because sometimes it's very misleading. You say, oh, well, we created 3,600 spaces. That's terrific. But if we lost some, then 3,600 is not the real updated number. So I think we need a bit more clarity coming from government with those number updates.
100%. I know back in November of, I think it was 2023 or 2024, it was 2023, Fraser Institute did a survey, surveyed 520 early childhood educators in Newfoundland and Labrador, and found that 45% are considered leaving the profession due to lack of recognition, 42% due to low wages, 25% due to working conditions. So, I mean, that's data from 2 years ago. What's that look like now? Did many of those leave? So 100% to your point, if we had 500 new ones hired but 700 left, we're actually negative 200 at it, 100%.
It's so without access to childcare, what are you doing?
Well, right now we're paying unregulated, so that equals to $50 a day, $250 a week, $13,000 per year. Whereas compared to regulated childcare, that will be $2,600 per year. So, I mean, just put that in perspective. My son started childcare, unregulated childcare, on May 12th. And by July 4th, we will already have paid what someone in regulated childcare would have paid for the whole year. And once again, I'm not pointing this at the parents with children in regulated daycare. Good for them. But where's the help for everyone that's in my same exact situation? And I'm paying $50 a day. I've heard stories of people paying $60, $65, and the further you get away from Metro, your options start getting more limited, right?
Yeah, when people have a childcare bill that's bigger than their monthly mortgage payment, then we're on the wrong track. And every single time we talk childcare, some of it is the same people that send me notes saying, look, if you can't afford to have kids, don't have kids. That's really oversimplistic, right? I mean, for starters, we need young families to be part of the population here. We need them to stay here. Part of the checklist for considering where you want to live as a young family is access to childcare and proximity to family, all those things, obviously. But I don't have young children. I don't need childcare any longer. But I understand how it works and the implication, broad strokes, for the economy. It's good for the economy. People get back into the workforce. Consequently, they're paying taxes again. They're able to move up the ladder where they work. Consequently, up the ladder with the rate of pay, up the ladder with the amount of taxes they pay. In Quebec, where they're the first province to implement it, GDP growth associated with accessible, affordable childcare was demonstrably a big part of the growth that they experienced. So we probably should be doing better.
I hear you 100%, Patty. It's $250 versus versus $50, right? Is what I would be paying. And I'm paying $250 right now. 50 is what I would be paying a regulated. So that extra $200 there, that's the disposable income. That's the difference between my partner and I going out to a meal there downtown. So if you're a downtown business wondering where me and my partner are at, we just don't have that money. So we can't. We got to cut that discretionary spending because childcare costs are so high.
I totally get it. Marius, I wish you and your family well. How many children do you have? Just the one?
One for now. He's good for now. I'll think about another in the future.
What's his name?
Theo.
Say hello to Theo for me, and I wish your family well.
Thank you. I appreciate your time here this morning.
My pleasure. Take care.
All right, bye-bye.
All right, there we go. It's a big topic. All right, let's go to line number 4. Ed, you're on the air.
Good day. How are you this morning, Patty?
Doing fine. How about you?
I'm not bad. Big shout out to the City Hall crews for cleaning up a mess up in a very frequently used children's park. This morning, around 4:20 this morning, an individual took a bag, apparently residential garbage, I'm thinking, into the park, ripped it open, and of course there was drug paraphernalia and needles and used stuff and all that again. This happened a couple of weeks ago, 2 times in a row, in like a couple of days, and it's happening again. Of course, we don't know who the individual is yet, but we may have some ideas on who it is. But either way, it's way out of control. I know other places in the area cities having the same exact problem, especially downtown. I got a question. Why are they giving out these kits for free to people when they're only ending up in the garbage and ending up in a children's park where children are exposed to possibly use drug stuff in bag and use needles? Something's going to have to change.
Well, let's just say there weren't needle exchange programs and there weren't free needles and other supplies. Then there would be just ones that they bought or stole, and they're still going to throw them on the ground. That's the thing in my head. And if we, the dirty needle exchange, just talk about the cost to the healthcare system. I mean, if I am addicted to intravenous drugs and my buddy is as well, and he shoots up and he's got hepatitis and I use his needle, then I get hepatitis. Then consequently, we have 2 sick people as opposed to 1, and the free needle or a stolen needle or a bought needle, it's going to end up on the ground, unfortunately so. That's kind of where I come from.
Well, the problem is, this is like I say, is in residential garbage and is ending up in a residential child's park.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So you're saying that the city came by and cleaned it all up?
Oh my God, yes. Yeah, as soon as they got the message from me, they actually came up with before even an hour, not even an hour, with other crews from actually a different area doing the same exact thing and the same problem, not too far away from this area. So there's been a number of issues apparently in the past couple of days of different areas having the same issue with people bringing the garbage into parks where children play and ripping them open and looking and using whatever drugs were there in the bag in residential parks.
Yeah, it's a big problem. It's probably bigger than some people think. If they don't go around some of the trailheads or if they don't go into some of the parks and they don't see it, but it is absolutely everywhere. So good on the city for reacting as quickly as they did, and I appreciate your time, Ed. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, man, they're still working in the areas again today. Apparently, there's lots going on. I don't know what was going on the weekend, but they've been steady cracked this today and yesterday, apparently.
Good news.
Anyway, big shout out to them, and I hope if anybody finds individuals like, please get, this stuff got to stop by before a child gets into this, and children are going to play with anything and everything, and heaven forbid if something else is into it, like fentanyl or something like that, and all of a sudden, child ends up dead in the middle of a park. That's going to be horrific to anybody.
Of course. It would be an absolutely tragic outcome. Thanks for this, Ed. Off to the break we go.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye. All right, very quickly, they've just passed me this note. So the Red Needle collection bin at Kitty Vitty is full of fast food garbage. So as much as it's awful that so many of the addicts are just throwing their needles on the ground as opposed to right there in the plastic receptacle, it's also not meant for your burger wrapper. Let's take a break. When we come back, the Vice Chair of the Advisory Board for Make-A-Wish, Des Whalen. He's in the queue, and then Margot's also there, and then hopefully you. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 2. Take one to the Vice Chair of the Advisory Board at Make-A-Wish. It's Des Whalen. Good morning, Des. You're on the air.
Morning, Paddy. How are you doing?
I'm okay, thank you. How about you?
Oh, pretty good. I just wanted to call in and raise some awareness of the Run the Rock campaign, which is going on this coming summer in their 30th anniversary. And I heard the commercial there on the break, so I figured I'd probably call in and give some context around exactly what Run the Rock is. So it's a campaign that's been going on for 29 years now. They've raised in their 29 years $1.8 million for the Make-A-Wish Foundation. And this year is their 30th anniversary, so they're hoping to hit a $2 million goal this year. It's essentially a relay style run across the province where 16 sailors from the Canadian Navy ship HMCS St. John's leave Port aux Basques, and they end in their namesake in St. John's. And over the course of a 10 or 12-day period, they do a relay stall where about half of the team is running and the other half of the team is raising money for the foundation. So in advance of their run, which is taking place this year from July 3rd to 15th, we're currently accepting donations, but also calling in to sort of make people aware that in the next few weeks this is going to be coming up. And you may see sailors from the HMCS St. John's all across Newfoundland and every nook and cranny, and if you see them, to reach deep into your pockets and give them some money. We've got about 35 children in the province right now who are waiting wishes. So their goal this year is to raise $200,000, and with the average cost of a wish being about $10,000, that would mean they grant 20 of those wishes. So our mission really is to create life-changing wishes for children with critical illnesses, and through the course of this campaign, we're hoping that they're going to be able to contribute a fair chunk of money towards doing that right here in this province.
We, every year, have some of the runners on the show, giving us sporadic updates from across the province, trying to, pump the tires, make people aware where the runners are, what they're running for, what people can do to help. So we're happy to play a very minor role in it, obviously, but keep the updates coming from the runners. And they're always pretty good conversations. They've all got their own personal stories as to why they are involved in Run the Rock. And, these are good, hard-working men and women who participate in doing a really important piece of fundraising initiative. And, of course, awareness piece is also important.
And 100%. And so I've been involved with the foundation now for about 10 years, and I've had the opportunity to meet some of the sailors who do this. And they come from nooks and crannies right here in this province, but also from outside the province. And one of the things that they always comment on is how generous Newfoundlanders are in supporting this campaign. So we've got 16 of them who are running this year, and interestingly enough, they are going to finish in St. John's at the closing ceremony, but immediately following that, there's a handful of them that are going to be deployed, as if running across Newfoundland wasn't hard enough. So these are a dedicated group, not only to their profession in the Canadian Navy, but to supporting this worthwhile cause and supporting sick children right here in the province.
Can you give us an idea of some of the interesting wishes that are in the hopper?
I don't know specifically what some of the wishes are that are in the hopper currently, but we've had all kinds of interesting ones. And in my 10 years with the foundation, I've had the opportunity to both tell people that they've been getting their wish, which is always fun and exciting, but also be part of a couple of wish deliveries. And so I think back a couple of years ago when we had a very interesting one in Central where they built a playhouse and the crew from out in Carbonear who do the rock solid builds actually built that house, and we got to go out and see them unveil the playhouse for a child out there. But I'm always amazed with two things. Number one is the support that Newfoundlanders give. A couple of years ago, I was in Grand Falls, Windsor, and we were doing a wish delivery. And I went to the Sobeys there to get a cake, to pick up the cake to bring to the wish delivery unveiling. And one of the people working in the bakery there asked me what I was doing, and I told her. And when we looked, during their lunch break, all the people who were on break at Sobeys actually came to the wish delivery as well, because they were wanted to be part of this, and I think that speaks to what Newfoundlanders do. But the wish children themselves, every time I meet one, I'm so impressed. They're selfless people who have been through hard journeys, and we know that when they have one of these wishes, it really helps their healing journey. I'll tell you one small story, Patty. A couple of years ago, we had a Wish ambassador who, at our annual gala, told a story about how she had received her wish to go to Disneyland. And up until that point, she had been on a plane 18 or 20 times. She had a complex genetic condition that required her to go back and forth to Ontario for surgeries. So she knew what it was like to be on a plane. But the most important part of receiving her wish is that her brother was going to get to go to Disneyland with her, and he had never been on a plane before. And I thought that was really touching, because here's someone who's been through so much, but the most important thing to her about receiving her wish was the selflessness of her brother finally being able to be on a plane. These are amazing kids, and this is an amazing organization that does great work, and I can't impress upon everybody who's listening this morning how important it is to, when you see these runners out doing the Run the Rock in a few weeks' time, to reach deep into your pockets and contribute to the cause, because they certainly do great work.
I remember a story, this maybe as much as 15 years ago, where the young girl who was the child who was sick, her wish that she got granted was that her brother could go see the Toronto Maple Leafs play. Right? Yeah. It just blew me away.
I mean, that tells you everything about these kids and what they've been through, but how much they still care for the people around them, right?
Yeah, and it was all about how good the brother was to his sick sister, how much time he spent with her as opposed to out knocking around with his pals, that kind of story. It was really quite heartbreaking and very awe-inspiring. Des, appreciate the time. Make sure you tell the participants in Run the Rock they're more than welcome to give us sporadic updates here on the program as well.
I'll do that, sure. Thanks, Patty.
Thanks, Des. All the best. Right, there we go. Des Whalen, Vice Chair of the Advisory Board at Make-A-Wish. Let's go to line number 5. Margot, you're on the air.
Good morning, Freddie. Thank you very much for taking my call.
No problem.
I have a big bouquet to throw out to a couple of young fellas. We were on the road, myself and Gary, doing deliveries, and we were up at Grossmorn Park at the gas bar, and apparently the tailpipe on our van had fallen down, so someone there said that a coat hanger would do the trick till we got back to St. John's. So, of course, there were no coat hangers there. So a couple of young fellows came in, and I went over and asked if they could help. And this happened to be two fishermen, Wes and Warren. And what they did is I can go out to the car and get something for you. And he got down on his back and he tied up the pipe, and so we were very grateful for that. And the people are just so wonderful, but I also wanted to say that the road on the way up to Grossmorn is terrible, and somebody told me that further up in Roddickton there are actually craters up there. So I know this goes into the government office, so please, we're getting to the visitor time, and it wouldn't be great for the people who come here to witness this. So, and yes, go ahead.
No, you go right ahead, Margot.
No, what I was going to say is that I'm also going to get in there, is that tomorrow at Chapters at 3:30, we are launching the Lucky 7, which is the #1 book in Newfoundland and Labrador. And my understanding, this is Gary Collins' 17th book, and apparently the captain, Eugene Carter, his girlfriend and family are going to be there. So if you want to bring your book along and get it signed by these people, I'm really looking forward to meeting all of them. And just wanted to get it out there tomorrow. It's 3:30 to 5:30, and it is going to be a blast because it's a good news story, and the title had already written itself, The Lucky Seven. So Gary said he would not have written it if had there been any other outcome, and he did an incredible job.
Fantastic.
So,
good for you, Margot. I have to get to the news, but anything else quickly before I have to go?
Just one thing, and that's Happy Father's Day to you and to everybody out there. And I'll bring it one step further, and Happy Mother's Day to all the other mothers, because without us, there wouldn't be a Father's Day.
Absolutely right. And I didn't say it off the top of the show. I was saving it for the bottom of the show, but absolutely Father's Day weekend. We'll give the lads out there a little shout out again before we say goodbye this morning. But I appreciate the time, Margot. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Patty. Really appreciate it.
Anytime.
Bye now.
Bye-bye. All right, here we are. We're very quickly bringing the school year to a close. So, you know me, I like talking about education, given just how important it is. So we'll talk a little education right after the news, and then whatever you want to talk about, don't go away.
You're listening to a rebroadcast of VOCM Open Line. Have your say by calling 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626 and listen live weekday mornings at 9 a.m.
Welcome back. Let's go to line number one. Say good morning to the president at the NLTA. That's Trent Langdon. Good morning, Trent. You're on the air.
Hi, good morning, Patty. Just calling in. I wanted to voice our concern related to some of the recent media around speech-language pathologists and the heightened caseloads that they have and the excessive amount of time it's been since allocations have increased for that group of individuals. SLPs in schools are a key piece of learning for our children, and we obviously need to keep advocating for shorter wait times and smaller caseloads so these professionals can actually do their work.
Yeah, it's just a real head scratcher because, in other disciplines, let's say family doctors, there's a shortage of doctors, but there's no shortage of speech pathologists. And for the public to not be, the public sector to not be hiring them while we have wait time that might be as much as 2 years, depending on where you live, I just don't understand because we're setting kids up for failure. And at every turn, we should be doing the exact opposite.
Right, yeah. I'm certainly not an SLP, but I've worked very closely with SLPs through the years as a school counselor. The direct therapy that they offer for young people, you think of primary kids when they're first coming in, the assessment they do, the communication language supports, receptive expressive language. There's so many different things they do to assist a young person. And if you can really get things moving at an early stage for a young person when it comes to their communication skills, just look at the lifelong impact that could have. Just in terms of their own life, obviously, that's the most important thing. But in terms of the system, if you increase supports, have the proper supports early on and proper assessments, you're going to just improve the system overall with time, let alone the academic benefits and the social development benefits. So it's a no-brainer in my mind, and it's a very common issue right now in our schools that the allocations are so low, but the needs are just growing exponentially.
Yeah, and the SLPs would be rotating through various schools, and maybe one lady called and said that when she was doing it, you go to one school and they might have 40 kids on that particular list in one of the 5 schools that she was attending to. So obviously people are not getting the help they need here. So I'm still trying to get someone from the government to explain to me as to why we're not hiring, because there's a private option, but private services by and large are cost prohibitive to many families who need that level of support. So, and these are very serious matters when it comes to comprehension. When it comes to reading ability, the same thing goes with SLPs. Then there's even things with swallowing disorders and how you eat.
That's right.
There's a lot to this.
It's the physical piece, too, that people don't realize that speech-language pathologists actually get involved with as well, like you said, swallowing. So, it's such an important piece of child development that is being, just the delays are so long that I can only imagine. I'm not a parent of a young person or a child with these particular type of issues, but it must be so frustrating. And with regards to, just the school system itself, the school system is what I call it is the universal equalizer. If we got to start relying on private entities to offer these essential services, this province is going to go down the wrong path because we need every young person to have equal access to these types of services.
Yeah, no question. So we'll still try to get some answers from the government, and nor do I have a child was in need of that type of therapy. But once the story made it part of the news, and we got a couple of calls, one the lady Molly Clark, who was actually in the CBC article that I read, then another lady named Judy, I can't remember her last name at this moment. She described her experience as a now retired speech language pathologist. But as soon as that happened, my email inbox was full of very sad stories from families who are waiting for that type of support and not knowing where to turn, and they don't have the money to go to the private sector, and they know that their child's education is going to be off to an extremely rocky start. So even when some of the children that need this type of support, they can't even understand basic instructions, like lay this piece of paper on your desk. They don't know what you're talking about. So it is a way bigger issue than people think. So we'll see if we
and so Patty.
Pardon
yeah,
me?
absolutely. So just in terms of what a lot of your listeners may not realize, a speech language pathologist is essential in some cases to a young person being able to learn how to read, for example, because we can identify issues and work with the child to get them to the point where they can begin reading. So that alone is enough of an indicator to the public to say, look, something has to be done here.
No question. So your term as the president at the NLTA is up at the end of this school year. Let's look back in some broad strokes about things you and I have talked about, and we've had many good conversations about education. Let's start with violence in schools. So the government talked about some additional supports that would be in schools. I can't remember exactly the category of teacher that they were talking about, but in your opinion, any realistic moves to try to curb the level of violence in schools that have been brought forward based on a policy from government?
Right. So we've seen some improvement. I'll certainly give credit where credit is due. With the introduction of student support services, teaching and learning assistants, we've heard some really good examples around the province, one specifically in Corner Brook, where those types of positions have really enhanced the ability of our schools and our administrators to offer supports to individual students that may need it. That's one piece. Is everything fixed? Not a chance. We did initiate a school safety coalition that was initiated by our association that included the RNC, the RCMP, Relationships First, different agencies of government. We pressed government to take this over a few months ago, and at the time Minister Howell agreed to do so. The new education minister, Minister Davis, has attended one of those meetings when he was the Minister of Justice and Public Safety. That was very well received, and now for him to have that background as education minister, we're looking forward to that piece. So the conversation can't end. We can't wait for another PWC to happen or another incident like at Waterford Valley when there's weapons being seized to reignite this discussion. This needs to be a constant. That's the whole point of the coalition. And, we have people at the table. And just say, for argument's sake, that there is a major incident that does go down, the coalition story is already in place. And you can call them together in a moment's notice to deal with the issue. So I think it's that, along with some monies that government has put forward in terms of the TLAs, but also the most recent budget of 400 teaching units. That alone, if you reduce class size numbers or access to professionals in our buildings, overall it does impact behavior and safety in schools.
And there's also a bit of a disconnect when we talk about violence in school, because inside the walls of the school there are some policies in place, but the issue regarding playgrounds and parking lots, we kind of, because that's the PWC story, right? So we can have safe school policies and everything, all the protocols that are in place, but we don't do a whole lot. And I mean, teachers are pretty overtaxed or overwhelmed already. So trying to monitor the playground and the parking lot is a different kettle of fish that I'm not even sure how we approach that.
Yeah, and Patty, I'll use myself as an example. The teachers in my school, I'm going back teaching in September to St. Peter's and Mount Pearl. Many times we had heard there might have been a fight on the playground, which wasn't even on our property, but might have been in the park, and it was very common for 2 or 3 teachers to run down there to see if they could intervene and help. So teachers go above and beyond to try and make schools as safe as possible. And what schools are often facing, something could even happen over the weekend, but it makes its way into the school grounds or onto the property, certainly because of social media. It could be something that erupted. There was another example of a fight was planned on school grounds over the weekend through a gaming system, that everyone was invited to a fight through a gaming system, and then the fight occurred on school property. So it just goes to show it's a different realm this day and age, and all partners need to be at the table.
100%. Anything else you want to broach regarding your term or what's happening in the schools before we run out of time?
No, buddy. I just want to say thank you to you. You know, your support for education has been phenomenal. Really appreciate that. We always need to keep education on the forefront. Since I've been president, I've been always promoting that children first. If you have a safe workplace for teachers, you have a safe learning space for children, and vice versa. So that's what this is about. This is about making it an overall better society for the province.
Appreciate your time on the show over the years, Trent, and thanks for doing it.
Thanks, Patty. All the best to you. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye. That's Trent Langdon, outgoing president at the NLTA. Let's take a break. Do not go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 4. Say good morning to the PC member for CBS. That's Barry Pettin. And good morning, Barry. You're on the air.
Hi, good morning, Patty. How are you doing?
Not too bad at all. How about you?
I'm good, thanks. Patty, I'm responding to a call. I know you on your earlier in the show, you had made reference about talking about the recent controversial elections case and some commentary I guess I've made in the last day or so on the issue. So I was kind of following up on that and calling in, I guess, to have a discussion about that and whatever arises from that conversation. But I think, Patty, the thing is, and the thing that I think that confuses a lot of people is no one really knows the outcome of this case other than the fact it's settled. And the NDP think they have a win. I'm not so sure where the winners are in this case, to be quite honest with you. I think the public, the electorate are not winning. People are left in the dark. Go back to 2021, we had an election that was, not just me, but everyone thought it should never have been called. It was about bad timing, and lo and behold, it happened, and we went into a 10-week. Anyone that was involved in that 10-week affair was pretty stressful. It wasn't a very nice time. I talked to Liberal cabinet ministers told me that they still got PTSD when someone mentions the election a year later. So, and that was unfortunate, and it happened, and the chips fall where they may. But we had a lot of concerns that spring, first sitting in the House, and we brought in a PMR, but we lobbied hard to have an independent investigation. It's on record. And I introduced the PMR, Private Members Resolution, to be debated, and a half an hour before we went into the House, the former Minister of Justice, current Premier Hogan, announced he was forming an all-party committee on election reform, which that wasn't really what we wanted. We wanted an independent, everyone removed, and give a naked look at this, bring everything down and see what really went wrong, because I had people in my district who never got a right to vote. And we sat on that. We reluctantly agreed because it wasn't what we wanted, but we said in spirit of trying to improve things, we sat on that committee till January 24. NDP never did sit on it. And at that time, it got to the point it was absolute waste of time. We weren't meeting. There was no production. We wrote letters to Mr. Hogan requesting things to speed along. We weren't happy with how things were progressing. And it was basically we were met with silence, and the commentary back sometimes was pretty partisan remarks. So not from Minister Hogan, in fairness, was other members on the committee. So we decided to pull away from it. But at that time, I think it's a very important part because I think Minister Aggie has come out and said, I read somewhere, that is due to the fact we all pulled off that committee. That's not accurate because Minister Hogan said at the time he had amendments prepared and they were imminent to be brought into the House. That was in January of 2024. So Minister Aggie's misquoting himself here, and he said Premier needs to clarify because he did say publicly, and it is out in the public ears, that he had amendments ready to roll in 2024. But I think the big piece here, Patty, is that they should have had a thorough investigation in 2021. People were irate. You would know better than anyone on your show. People were irate. Were losing their right to vote. And now they push this off into this committee, and we know sometimes these committees are just smoke and mirrors, and it shuts down for that moment, and people forget about it, and it seems like government gives the appearance of doing something. And I've never been a huge fan of these all-party committees because that's somewhat, it brings everyone involved there. But the ultimate blame for this was 2021, that election shouldn't have been called when it was called, and government of today, and Minister Hogan led the charge, should have had an independent investigation. I stand by that, and I'll reiterate it again today, and we would have probably avoided a lot of what's happened. That case would have probably proceeded. Now we got a case, there's a settlement made, I don't really know I don't know, I can't figure out what's good and bad about it. Minister Abbott stepped down, and he told everyone he had no wrongdoing, he still felt he would have won the election, but I can't figure out, if you're innocent, why are you going to step down?
Yeah, but what does that mean?
So I guess I'm at a loss. Well, Patty, if you had done no wrongdoing, and you feel that you're fully in the right, would you step down? He ran for Premier a month ago. So, that's pretty clear to me. I think it was the end of the day. I think he thought it wasn't going to work in his favor. And it's legal advice maybe, and that's something we'll never know. I guess he probably told you're going to lose now. If you don't step down now, you're probably going to lose in the court side and just before the elections call, which would be put everyone in a worse case. And plus, if it goes to court, all the information that's in there, and it's probably not too complimentary to government, was going to come out. So I guess it was a calculated decision through legal advice, and fair enough. I mean, good on him. But I don't think it clears the air with anyone. I mean, I wouldn't have if I done no wrong. If I had no wrongdoing, I felt I'd done nothing wrong, and I was adamant in my position that I'd done nothing wrong. I'd fight it, and that's who I am, and that's pretty clear, and I think it's pretty straightforward. Most people, I've heard a lot of other people say the same thing. Why move on? Why do that if you got nothing to hide? There's nothing there. Let's go. Let it run out the court. Let's fight this out the courtroom. But that's what I would be doing.
But John Abbott wasn't accused of any wrongdoing.
He was one of the defendants in this case. So obviously there was some through the courts, and we'll never know the full evidence. He was named as one of the defendants.
Well, that's only because. But being realistic here, it's only that case because Alison Coffin, who ran against him, lost by 53 votes. Had that been John Doe, it would have been the same person being named because he just happened to be the winner of that election based on the very bungled election. I would agree with that, but no one said that John Abbott did anything wrong, or that Crystalline Howell did anything wrong, or anybody else who was in some of these challenged districts. The allegations were that elections in Newfoundland and Labrador did the wrong. Is that not a fair characterization of what we're talking about?
I'm not going to dispute that, but that brings it right back to my initial remark. Well, why did he resign? I mean, Elections Newfoundland made mistakes. They should be on Elections Newfoundland, not on John Abbott. So therefore, I would let it go to court and fight it out. Let chips fall where they may. I mean, if you got nothing to hide, let it go. That's a simple. I think it's pretty easy comment to follow. I'm not saying John Abbott's guilty, nor am I saying he's innocent. I'm not saying he's anything. But he was the one who stood in front of the cameras and he said he was stepping away and he didn't want to drag out a court process. And I mean, the man ran for premier a month ago, so I don't think it was in his plans. He was just interested and ready to check out of politics. So there's something more to it. And I think that this court case could be released, or something should be released, because right now a lot of people, a lot of unanswered questions, and those unanswered questions, Paddy, leads a lot of people to doubt our electoral system. And it was shaken in 21, and it's a really sad thing. It should never be that way. And now here we are in 25, we're on the eve of an election, and we're no further ahead, in my opinion, other than assurances from Elections Newfoundland and Labrador that they have processes in place. And I'm on the management committee. I was on the election reform committee. I don't know what processes they got that's going to change things from 21. Maybe they got stuff there, but I'm not convinced that we're any better off. And I mean that's cold comfort to the people out there, the electorates, that are going to be casting their vote, and hopefully they don't get caught in the same situation again. So I think it needs more clarity. I think right now it's too many balls left hanging.
But the implication you're making, though, to be clear, is that John Abbott had a hand in the handling of special ballots. Because that's what you're saying, if he's innocent or if he's guilty, but he hasn't been accused of doing anything wrong. It wasn't about the candidates, it was about Elections NL. It was about the legislation. It was about the administrative approach that the Elections NL body took. So I'm not so sure you're saying, well, you hear many people say it and you think it's crystal clear. It's not to me, because he wasn't accused of anything.
But Paddy, why did he resign?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I'll leave it to John Abbott to describe why he resigned, and I have no earthly idea. But you're saying let the court case play out.
I'm not saying that, by the way. You're putting words in my mouth respectfully. I'm not saying that.
No, here's a quote.
I've clearly said it.
Here's a quote.
I've never said John Abbott is guilty. No, and I've never said it. I keep repeating that. I'm not making that accusation. I'm making an observation based on what a lot of commentators out there, me included, that feel, why would you resign if you have nothing to hide and everything is above board? Why would you step away from being a cabinet minister, fellow that was running for premier a month ago? Why would you do that if there was nothing there for anyone to have concerns with? Well, that's my question, because I wouldn't, and I hazard to guess you wouldn't either, Paddy.
Barry, but if the legal advice was, hey, it's stacking up against you, you might lose in court, and so consequently stepping down might have been the legal advice given. But this is a quote from you: I wouldn't just walk away if I was innocent. That implies that he may be guilty.
Well, that's your interpretation, but in the full context of that, I think I followed that up with saying I'm not making any observation that Minister Abbott is guilty. Absolutely not. I'm making that, if that were me, I was asked, the premise of that question, Paddy, is in fairness, I was asked by VOCM reporter, if it was you, what would you do? If it was me, I wouldn't step down if I was innocent. That was my comment. It was put to if it was Barry Pitton, and that's how that played out. But I have no problem if I was asked again today by you. I would not step down if I had nothing to hide and I was innocent. I mean, maybe it's nothing to worry about. I don't know. Maybe the wrong term, innocent is not the right word. But I still stand by. If I had I don't feel that I had any wrongdoing, why would I step down? I mean, that's a big decision. That kind of takes over all this controversial election case that Minister Abbott stepped down. And then, Carl Reese is on the news last night, I believe, and he's saying that's like they got vindication. I'm not so sure Minister Abbott stepping down is vindication because we don't really know what happened. So I think that all just muddies the water. So we were left to think that it's almost to give us the premise out that Minister Abbott done something wrong. Quite frankly, he probably never. But that's what we're left with to believe, and we don't know. We don't have no other earthly idea why. Other than the fact that election Newfoundland said there were errors made, we don't know what those errors are. So it's a lot of unanswered questions and affects our electoral system. And I think it's valid debate and it should be discussed.
I talk about the integrity of elections all the time, and we should really do everything possible to ensure that people have faith in the electoral process. But the questions here are what Elections NL did. We can talk about the timing by Premier Fury to call an election in the first place, but it's a process issue, not an individual issue to me. Plus, we have no earthly idea who people were going to vote for necessarily. Not everyone put their voice forward in whether it be in St. Barbara, Lansing Meadows, or Mount Pearl North, or in St. John's East, Kitty Vitty, or in any district. Harbour, Maine, just pick one, yours, CBS. So when people didn't get their ballots, that's the problem. How Elections NL handled the upheaval in the middle of the election call. And we can debate, whether or not there should have been an election, but that's kind of the semantics of this. The fact of the matter is it was called, and then there's a process that had to be followed, and it didn't work. And that's what we need to discuss, from my personal opinion. For me, it's not about Alison Coffin or John Abbott or Sheila Fitzgerald or Jim Lester or Crystal Lynn Howell or Lucy Stoyles. It's the process, for me. That's the biggest part of this equation, because the candidates will change. If we run into a similar problem into elections in the future, then it'll be the process we're concerned about, not who ran for what party. That's just my own perspective.
No, fair enough. I mean, the process is very important. That's something I've also spoken about too. But I think that there's left, this unfolding of this case this week, I think has left more questions than answers. And I don't think that's fair. I said it yesterday, I'll say it again. The electorate are the ones that suffer. I'm an elected official. I have to have faith in the system. And right now, I guess I got faith there, but I'm questioning some. I got some questions. And I think everyone do. But you have to have faith in your electoral system. And until they do something better, maybe Minister Rogan needs to clarify what he done with those so-called amendments that were imminent. Why didn't he have the police investigation, or not police investigation, thorough investigation into election 2021? Why weren't any of those things followed? Why did everything was all fine? We know it wasn't fine. Now we've proven in the courts it's not fine. As cabinet minister after stepping down over it and everything, but yet we still have no answers, and the people still have no answers. And who's the winner there, Patty? I don't think I think I heard someone along the way of the week saying, "Who's the winner?" I don't know who's the winner. I don't see no winners. The NDP claimed victory, but I don't think there's any victory here. I think that right now we're left with scratching our head more than just as much as we were back in 2021. That's my opinion. It's flashbacks to 21, and here we are on the eve of election. I think that's the base of a lot of my concerns. I think they're valid.
Fair enough. I'd like to know what the settlement was. End of story.
Yes, absolutely. We should know.
I got to get to the news, Barry. Appreciate your time.
Okay, Patty. Take care.
Bye-bye. It's Barry Pitton, Opposition House Leader and the PC member for CBS. Let's take a break. Don't go away.
The Tim Powers Show. Join the conversation weekday afternoons at 4 p.m. on your VOCM.
Welcome back to the program. Let's go to line number 3. Good morning, Marie. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. I'm calling. I want to speak regarding a group on Facebook, and the group name is called Here for Her, Newfoundland and Labrador. Now, I believe the intention at the time when this person created it was for anybody in a bad relationship pretty much get in there and tell them what they're going through, but you weren't supposed to post any photos, names of people, so on. But this individual, it appears that she's had this group going on for probably 2-3 years, and she has over 24,000 followers. Now, I was unaware of this group until a few days ago when I started getting messages and screenshots, and it involved a picture of my 27-year-old son, and which opened up the commenting area for anybody anonymous that was in this group could just bash him to pieces with false accusations, information, right on down to, he treats women bad, sexual assault, calling him a rapist. And so basically it was ex-girlfriends and friends of the ex-girlfriends. And yeah, it just became a bashing scene. So I decided to investigate to see who was administrator to this group. And when I found the name, I private messaged her and I basically said, hey, you're listed as administrator for this group. And I've been getting screenshots and messages that there's a photo of my son there and he's just been bashed to pieces with false accusations, information, and he can't defend himself because it's a private group. And she kind of come back at me and she was very ignorant. She called me cut the umbilical cord. You're the mommy of the year. Cheers to you. You're the problem here. And after a couple of messages back and forth, she said, by the way, I'm going to screenshot our messages now and I'm going to post it to this Facebook group. And so then people started screenshotting the information. She went into my Facebook page, my profile. She took a screenshot of my picture, my name, first and last. She posted it to this group. Then the bashing started against me. I'm an unfit mom, and I'm babying him, and I'm the problem, and so on, right into my personal life from people bashing. So I had to block her and things like that. But as I investigate a bit further, I have seen through the last 2 or 3 years, other individuals have reached out to the public on Facebook asking people to go in and look up this group and report it for harassment and bullying. And now, one of the individuals, the ex-girlfriend, we will say, who posted a photo of my son there, so the bashing has started. She has since realized, oh my God, what have I done? And she removed a photo of my son and she removed her commentary. Now, the administrator on the group, she's very upset. She's very mad. She has in a message. I tried to send a couple to your VLCM email. She's really angry with this individual who removed all this stuff. She said, how do you do that? Put this stuff in the group and then you just remove yourself from this group? This is unfair. And other people say, yeah, why did she do that? So the administrator is very upset now because the photo no longer exists of my son, and this bashing board has started. So to me, that's cyberbullying, because if she has 24,000 followers, and if somebody goes to invite to be in this group, before she accepts your invitation, she will scroll down through your personal profile on Facebook to see if you have any connections with anybody that they're bashing, and you do not get invited to the group. So to me, it's cyberbullying, because my son has been receiving screenshots, and I believe a month ago was another young fella that was posted there. He's talked about taking his life because he has no way to defend himself. He has lost friends. People are messaging him nasty messages, and the same thing is happening with my son.
I'm familiar with it. The people, I don't think they realize just how much harm can be done by typing what they type in the comfort of their own home or wherever they are, and maybe have no earthly idea about the person that they're actually typing about. But the pile-on becomes contagious. It's something else. I've been on the receiving end, and it's not pretty.
Yeah, like she said, one of her messages said, maybe cut the umbilical cord. I don't know who your son is, and maybe you should have started with a name. Secondly, say hi to the police. I'm sure they haven't heard my name in a while. Thirdly, good luck, honey. It's a civil matter. Fourth, get out of my inbox, because we don't support women who support bad men. Now, she's talking about me regarding my son. Then she's like, please calm down, Mommy. There's still time for you to do your job and maybe create a good, strong man instead of a little boy running to his money. Mommy, cheers. Now, get out of my inbox. Then I said, obviously, you must not have children of your own to uphold this Facebook page, whatever. She said, I'm a mother of 2 strong men and 2 strong women and 3 soon-to-be strong grandchildren. And if one of them harms any human being mentally, physically, trust me, I would not protect them. You are the problem. Then she calls me Mommy of the Year award, cheers, and she tells me that she's screenshotting my son. Like, how does an individual like this, who is an administrator, what does an individual like myself, my son, and others who have been bullied, cyberbullied, and bashed, and your name slandered, to get all over? Now, I'm sure this is on Newfoundland and Labrador by now, these screenshots and these 24,000 followers, well, they all have friends and they all have acquaintances, so it just goes on and on and on. What does an individual do to stop this person from carrying on with this group page and ruining people's lives?
Yeah. I'm sorry that it happened to you and your family, Marie. I really am.
What I would like to put out there, and I'm not sure if it's okay to do it, I would ask the public who are listening to go to this Facebook page. It's called Here for Her, Newfoundland and Labrador. You don't have to join the group, but up in the right-hand corner, there's 3 dots. You can report this Facebook page to the Facebook security for the cyberbullying and have this account, taken out of there and removed. And that's the only way that we're going to be able to stop this individual from ruining people's lives. If the public takes it upon themselves to go into her Facebook page, and again, it's called Here for Her, Newfoundland, Labrador. Go into 3 dots up in the right-hand corner, report this page to Facebook security for the cyberbullying. And that's what I'm asking the public to do.
I appreciate your time, Marie. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for having me on.
No problem. Take care. All right, bye-bye. It can get away from people in a hurry. Anyway, let's see here. Let's take our final break of the morning and the week. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go line number 2. Barry, you're on the air.
We're anticipating a food fishery announcement very soon. I would guess maybe either late this afternoon or late next week, Friday afternoon. Patty, haven't heard anything at all. Even Patty, if they met us halfway with the season with 10 fish, or even open the season with the same number of 5 fish, and look at things next year. More people than ever are supporting this cause. The fight is going to get larger. We're now looking at the possibility of launching a court case. Fishers who are sending letters to politicians, Patty, are receiving no responses, or if so, it's just lip service. Even our own provincial government has failed to stand up for us, using the excuse that it's a federal issue, except for, I will put out kudos to MHA Paul Lane. I received an email from the Prime Minister's office, which was then CC'd to Minister Thompson, and I replied to the Prime Minister, CC'ing Minister Thompson, about our frustration, and still no response. Patty, how can fish managers 2,000 miles away properly manage our resource? It's the heights of ignorance. There are a gazillion reasons why these changes should happen. There are only 2 reasons why not, and that they are DFO and Minister Joanne Thompson, and both those equal discrimination against people of Newfoundland and Labrador.
Yeah, we're still trying to get the minister on. And so why are you expecting an announcement today? Or are you just saying that it's going to be a late on a Friday afternoon affair?
Just saying, it's only a couple of weeks away, Pat, and you and I both said in the past that it's going to be the last week before the season opens. So it'll either be late Friday afternoon this week or next week. And why late Friday afternoon, Pat? Because there's nothing then that the people in Newfoundland and Labrador can say or do when it's late afternoon, and then by Monday, more than likely, it'll be all forgotten about. But, Paddy, this fight has woken up a lot of people in Newfoundland and Labrador, and I believe that the fighting spirit of the fighting Newfoundlander has now been awakened, Paddy, and we're even looking at the possibility of challenging this in court down the road.
You're going to challenge it in court?
We're looking at the possibility, Paddy. I'm not saying that we are. We're looking at the possibility.
Okay. That's interesting. Of course, if you plan to do it, I'd be curious to hear more. But anything else you want to say while we have you this morning, Barry, before I sneak on one more call?
Thank you, Patty. Yeah, it's just crazy. I started this battle back in 2014, 2015 or so, and now we started the battle again this year on March 16th. And we're still waiting for some kind of response, and not a sound, Patty, nothing. and it's just frustrating to no end. And you know, we're going through the proper channels. We're doing everything right. We're getting lots of publicity. We're making publicity, holding demonstrations, and still not even a response. No, not a thing. It's the heights of ignorance, Patty. And I hope that people in Newfoundland and Labrador remember this when it comes to election time this fall, and indeed next time for the federal election.
Appreciate the time, Barry. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Patty. It's been a pleasure.
My pleasure. Take good care. All right, there we go. One more call this morning. Final word goes to line number 1. Good morning, Trevor Stagg. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. How are you today?
Trevor, I'm doing better if we can't get a clear phone line so we can hear your message before we run out of time. So I suppose before I forget, do want to wish all the dads out there a very happy Father's Day. Hopefully you have the opportunity to spend some time with your family. And you know, Mother's Day is the big deal. On Father's Day, hopefully we have the opportunity to have a nice day. No real plans for me. Thankful to have the kids around, though, obviously. So the happiest of Father's Day to you. And for fellas like me we've since lost our dads, it's something that I think about throughout the year, but of course mostly on Father's Day as well. Let's see if we have a clear line on 3. Trevor Stagg, you're on the air.
Hi, Patty. Hope it's better today.
That's better. Thank you, Trevor.
All right. Thanks. Patty, I'm here to talk about some positive news for the Stephenville area today. The Summer Soiree, which is a new event, or the rebranding of the former Friendly Invasion that's been going on for approximately 10 years here in Stephenville. And so we're now called the Stephenville Summer Soiree. And starting on July 2nd, we're going to have, I believe, approximately 25 free music events for the people of Stephenville and the tourists of Stephenville, starting on July 2nd. Every Wednesday, every Thursday in both July and August, there'll be events at the Stephenville Beach. There'll be a bonfire at Blanchbrook Park. There'll be music there. And then hopefully starting July 20th, we'll also have music in the town square every Sunday afternoon. These are all free events for everybody to take part in. So we're really encouraging people to get out, see their friends, and come and take part in the new Stephenville Summer Soiree.
Who's behind all this? I know, of course, you are, but it takes a pretty big team to pull off these types of events, especially when we're talking about over the course of a summer.
That's true, and you know we've got a great partnership with the town of Stephenville this year, actually, okay. And so the town of Stephenville has really stepped up, and so we're looking forward to continuing our relationship with them. Of course, this town of Stephenville has been big sponsors over the years. There's a committee, and I got to tell you, it's some of the most active volunteers in our town. It's a vibrant committee that's been going on for approximately 10 years. I think I took over as chair in 2016, and pretty much except for a brief sojourn during the pandemic, I've been the chair ever since, and our dedicated volunteers, for example, also this year we're partnering with the Stephenville Theatre Festival to change up our brunch on the base. It's now going to be our Broadway brunch on the base, and the Stephenville Theatre Festival, I understand, has created a original production for the brunch, and so we're really looking forward to that. The Stephenville Festival, of course, has been around here since the late 70s, and really, really excited about that new partnership as well.
The town could use a positive shot in the arm, and this sounds like one.
You got that right, Patty. And, you know, I can tell you that during the summer in Stephenville, if you take part in any of these events, you're going to see a lot of positive community involvement, and I really encourage people to come down and take part.
Yeah, and I hope they do exactly that. Congratulations to you and your team for pulling it off, and thanks for doing it.
Thanks, Patty. You have a great weekend.
Very same to you. Thanks, Trevor.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Nothing like a bit of positivity to wrap up the program. Love that. And, you know, we do indeed welcome some of those types of PSA type of calls when we're trying to spread the word about what might be going on in your community that you're interested in checking out. This is a question, I guess, maybe for Dave or Sarah. So the Pet Expo is this weekend. Are you allowed to bring a pet? Someone asked me via email. I don't know the answer to that question. You are allowed to bring your dog or your cat or whatever your pet is. All right. Good show today. Good shows all week. Big thanks to all hands who support the program. The callers, the listeners, the emailers, and tweeters. You're all right. We will indeed pick up this conversation again on Monday morning, right here on VOCM and Big Land FM's Open Line. On behalf of the producer, David Williams, I'm your host, Paddy Daly. Have yourself a safe, fun, happy weekend. Happy Father's Day. Talk Monday. Bye-bye.
Breaking news from the stadium tonight as an anonymous fan foot the bill for 55,000 hot dogs, bringing that sweet tubed meat to everyone in attendance.
Free
55,000 hot dogs? What does that even cost?
While the identity of this Frankfurter philanthropist remains anonymous, their all-beefy generosity will go down in history.
The new Mega Millions. More to win means more to give. How you spend it is up to you.
Yeah! For game odds and details, visit sceducationlottery.com.